dude, your metaphysical trousers are down. We can see how you're being thick. I sort of feel embarrassed for him, really.
Yeah. The idea that there is an inviolable worth and dignity to every human being simply because they're a human being, not because of anything they achieve, no matter race or class or ethnicity, gender, simply by being a human. I have a right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, or like whatever it is. Yeah. It's absolutely beautiful. Harari is right about one thing. He's right that has come from Christianity. It's come from the Bible. Hi, I'm Glen from Speak Life. We like to see all things through the lens of Jesus. And today we are joined by our favorite guest on this channel. Paul Blackham has joined us for many different conversations. Some have been about bishops. Some have been about the multiverse. Some have been about COVID and the pandemic. But Paul, why don't you introduce yourself for those who might not know you?
So yeah, I'm Paul Blackham, and I've been minister at All Souls and taught theology and done church planting and written some books and Bible study guides, book by book. I do a lot of that. And I kind of do those things, but also kind of have a podcast and things like that.
Tell us the name of the podcast.
It's called The Christ-Centered Cosmic Civilization.
All the C's.
All the C's. And it really happened because I just got all this stuff in my head about like, how are we going to make sense of this cosmos and civilization and all these things? And Christ is right. He's the source of all this. Language, physics, music, maths, architecture, everything. So I thought, I'll just disgorge it and no one will listen to it. And then a few people have listened to it.
Yeah, lots of people are finding it really, really helpful. And I just love spending time with Paul Blackham in my head and filling my mind with a larger vision for things. I wanted to talk to you about 3 different individuals who've come across my Twitter feed in the last day. And they're all talking about human rights and God. And what we're going to do is we're going to look at, in fact, 4 people. We're going to look at Yuval Noah Harari. We're going to look at Tom Holland. We're going to look at Jordan Peterson. And we're going to look at Emmanuel. And we'll figure out what that means as we go. But why don't we watch together a viral moment from a TED Talk that Yuval Noah Harari gave 9 years ago as he talks about human rights as a fictional reality. Let's have a look.
Most legal systems are based on this idea, this belief in human rights. But human rights are just like heaven and like God. It's just a fictional story that we've invented and spread around. It may be a very nice story. It may be a very attractive story. We want to believe it. But it's just a story. It's not a reality. It is not a biological reality. Just as jellyfish and woodpeckers and ostriches have no rights, Homo sapiens have no rights also. Take a human, cut him open, look inside, you find their blood, and you find the heart and lungs and kidneys, but you don't find there any rights. The only place you find rights is in the fictional stories that humans have invented and spread around. And the same thing is also true in the political field. States and nations are also, like human rights and like God and like heaven, they too are just stories. A mountain is a reality. You can see it, you can touch it, you can even smell it. But Israel or the United States, they are just stories, very powerful stories, stories we might want to believe very much, but still they are just stories. You can't really see the United States. You cannot touch it, you cannot smell it.
So this has gone viral on Twitter. This was also done as a TED Talk. Yuval Noah Harari, after that, was invited to do the proper TED Talk. This is a TEDx. Then he did TED Global in London, and it became a popular thing. And he was in the middle of writing *Sapiens*, which is his, multi-million best-selling book that he followed up with *Homo Deus*, where he tracks the history of humanity as sapiens, and then he, in *Homo Deus* talks about the future, where we're going to arise and ascend into a different kind of species, a different kind of human. Why do you think this went viral on Twitter?
I've never seen that clip, and it's extraordinary to me that when he says, I can see a mountain. Yeah. And I'm like, well, you don't actually. What you see is a conglomeration of rocks and things like that. But he will adopt a standpoint and see these things and go, that's a mountain.
How do you know it's not a hill?
That's right. How do you know it's not a hill? And why is it? Because if he just sees a few rocks, would he go, it's a mountain?
Yes.
No, he wouldn't. It has to be, and he arbitrarily selects a certain point at which, or he might say social convention does that and says, this is a mountain, and go, now that's a mountain.
Yes.
That's fact.
Yes.
But then if he sees a conglomeration of human beings, and so there's a point at which people go, oh no, that's the United States. And he goes, oh no, you see, I can't buy into that. I'm having a conglomeration of rocks, but not a conglomeration of human beings.
Yeah.
You're like, dude, your metaphysical trousers are down. We can see how you're being thick. I sort of feel embarrassed for him, really.
Yeah.
But I can see why people get, because it's like he's like, rights are not real. You know, nations aren't real.
Yes.
Rights are real. And I'm like, but by that same logic, neither are mountains.
Yeah.
Like neither was he kidding? And then he says, you cut a human being open, and I was looking for this like sphere. Oh, there was
inviolable worth and dignity.
There's something.
Yeah.
And like when I cut human beings open, they're just like blood and sewage or something like flops out. And it's like far from making me think higher of humans, when I kill them and split them open, I think less of them. And we're like, dude. Yes. There's no insight there, I'm afraid. Like you kill people, cut them open, and it turns out the person, you can't see them. No, I get that. But that's, anyway,
Yeah, we kill to dissect. But what he's doing is it's kind of the fruit of the Enlightenment project. And that's why I said we'd talk about Immanuel. Immanuel Kant makes this whole sort of division between facts and values. And facts are things that we can investigate and critique, but values are in a different realm. And of course, he's kind of reacting against, and there's some dialogue with Hume, like you can't derive any kind of values from facts. Never the twain shall meet. These are very different kind of spheres of reality. And it seems like the Enlightenment project and post-Enlightenment project has been to kind of, let's leave aside that which we cannot see, touch, taste, and smell, right? And let us dive down into that which we can dissect and cut up. And lo and behold, guess what? When I cut things up, I don't find human rights.
Yeah.
Is that the project?
Well, the Enlightenment project does do this fake thing of saying, I'm only going to take like the phenomenology and what my senses tell me, that's fact. And then, there's other things like interpreting those things and like applying meaning to it. Well, it could be true, but that's just your opinion, and there's no fact to it. But the only problem is, nobody really. We know now you can't really. Well, it's always been obvious. It's not like we know now, but it's like. All the things that are described, it's like, no, that's just what my senses are telling me. No, it isn't. All the attempts to describe that are already interpretive meaning. You can't climb into this position where you're like, I'm only having the facts, pure data.
I'm a neutral observer.
Yeah.
Just
And it's
the
like,
facts.
well, you've selected what you are going to observe and how you're going to collect it, and at the level, the granularity of it, and say, I will look at the thing at this level and not at this. And not at this. Why? You've already done it. There is no uninterpreted level. Whereas Immanuel Kant's like, no, we're just going to have the pure facts without, and so that any as if a disengaged mind would see things this, but all this other stuff no. And you're like, no, there isn't that option. There's only interpreted reality. There's only that. And then for them, because what they've done in the Enlightenment, they've gone, we're a bit stressed out because all our civilization, the success of science and everything has grown up within Christian culture. But our Christian parents are arguing, and we're finding it super stressful. And they're like, they won't agree.
The wars of religion you're talking about, Catholics, Protestants, and all that. Yeah.
30 Years War, all that kind of thing. And they're like, my mum and dad are arguing, and they won't get on. So I'm leaving home.
Right.
I'm leaving home now.
I'm off to science land.
And I don't need, I'm off to science land. And I don't even need your stuff anymore, kind of thing. Yeah. And off we go in a hub. And it's like, no, you actually can't. You're actually, and as so often in the real world, if children do that sort of thing, they actually still need their mum and dad. And they're still dependent on them. They're sort of like,
and they sound very much like their mum and dad, much as they hate that. Yeah.
And can you pay my credit card bill and all that sort of thing? And it's a bit like that, where it's like running up these sort of epistemological debts, and the mum and dad are like, we'll still pay him, sort of thing.
Yeah.
And he's not realizing that, and he's like going, no. Like the whole Immanuel Kant project's totally legit, and it's like, dude, it just isn't. It never was. It was embarrassing. There isn't an uninterpreted view of reality, and behind that, it's like, actually, can I mention Christ now? Like, just to say, like,
Yes.
yeah, I know, is that
should.
allowed? Yeah. But it's just the fact that were those parents are coming, okay, they maybe were slightly arguing a little bit over the Reformation, but were they really would say, no, but what we're not arguing about is that the whole of the heavens and the earth, you can't have a disengaged perception, like objective. And then it's like, well, where are we supposed to get a correct? Where is the mind that has understood it and interpreted it? It's like, oh no, well there is such a one. Don't worry, the one who is the source of it all and holds it all together. We kind of trust that he designed us in such a way that we could in some way think like him, and that he's not maliciously creating us to draw ludicrously false conclusions, but he's created in such a way to make it possible to think his thoughts after him, and all this. There's something benevolent about the way it's all been made.
Yes.
And then Kant was like, no, I can't have it. I just want the facts.
Right.
You can't have those, mate.
Right, and the scientific revolution came out of Christian presuppositions that there is a law above and there are minds in here, that even Homo sapiens, somehow this 3 pounds of grey matter is able to understand the mysteries of the cosmos and go out into the world and triangulate the hypotheses with the empiricism. And it works. Well, it works because of the Christian hypotheses and the Christian presuppositions. But we've left home and we're off to science land and we love our scalpels, and so we've cut everything up.
Yeah.
Interestingly, you took issue with the mountains thing, quite rightly.
Oh, yeah.
But the internet is taking issue with the human rights thing. Okay. That's why people are losing their minds, because they're saying, no, we don't mind losing mountains. Like, are you seriously saying that human rights are fictional? Are you saying that they are not real? Because they feel more real than mountains.
Yeah, so I guess the reason, in a way, the reason, I suppose that reveals something about me, but I can understand, it's like, obviously he's not got any, we can't sustain human rights. If you're going to go, we're going to try to have a view of reality in which we've extracted the mind that the one who created it all and made it good and glorious, full of beauty, truth, goodness, and made us, and then we say, okay, we're going to just take him out of the picture and we're going to try to understand it without him. Oh, and we're struggling to value human beings, and we're starting world wars and killing hundreds of millions of ourselves and murdering babies and taking organ parts, and we're doing that, and we're like, what's going on? And I'm like, that's what's good. So I can understand why a person who hasn't realized that a Christless existence is Death Campville. Like, I'm like, of course that's the case. Of course you're going to struggle to grab, but I can see why you're sickened by it. You're like, no, but wait, I don't like the idea of a world in which human beings are not loved and taken seriously, even the vulnerable, especially the vulnerable, Yeah. And I'm like, no, exactly. But how are you going to pay for that good? Like, that is an amazing good.
Yes.
And the parents, or the parent, like, he's bought that for you.
Right.
And you're like, I don't want your stuff. And you're like, no, you do want that. You do want that. And you're crying out because you're suddenly realizing that's being repossessed by the bailiffs.
Yes. And we've smuggled out the candlestick of human rights underneath our coat.
That's right. Yeah.
And now we recognize we have no right to this thing.
And the bailiffs have come.
Yuval is like, chuck that away. That's from Dad.
Yeah.
And we're like, but no, that's like,
I like that.
This is one I really like.
Yes.
And this, like with my friends.
Yeah.
The idea that there is an inviolable worth and dignity to every human being simply because they're a human being, not because of anything they achieve, any way that they perform, no matter race or class or ethnicity, gender. It's all, simply by being a human, I have a right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, or like whatever it is.
Yeah.
It's absolutely beautiful. But Harari is right about one thing. He's right that has come from Christianity. It's come from the Bible.
Yeah,
right?
and he's like, it's just a story as far as I'm concerned, but it's not real.
Yeah.
And it's like, dude, it isn't real if.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let me show you what happened at the end of the TED Talk Global that he gave, because he was asked some questions about this 9 years ago, and the answers that he gave to these questions are exactly as dystopian as you might imagine.
Yuval, you have a new book out. After Sapiens, you wrote another one, and it's out in Hebrew, but not yet translated into
I'm working on the
English.
translation.
This is Homo Deus.
Okay, and in the book, if I understand it correctly, you argue that actually the amazing breakthrough that we are experiencing right now not only will potentially make our life better, but they will create, and I quote you, new classes and new class struggles, just as the Industrial Revolution did. Can you elaborate for us?
Yes, in the Industrial Revolution, we saw the creation of a new class of the urban proletariat. And much of the political and social history of the last 200 years involved what to do with this class and the new problems and opportunities. Now, we see the creation of a new massive class of useless people. As computers become better and better in more and more fields, there is a distinct possibility that computers will outperform us in most tasks and will make humans redundant. And then the big political and economic question of the 21st century will be, what do we need humans for? Or at least, what do we need so many humans for? At present, the best guess we have is keep them happy with drugs and computer games. But this doesn't sound like a very appealing future.
No, it doesn't, Yuval.
Okay, so you're basically saying in the book, and now that for all the discussion about the growing evidence of significant economic inequality, we are just kind of at the beginning of the process?
Again, it's not a prophecy. It's seeing all kinds of possibilities before us. One possibility is this creation of a new massive class of useless people. Another possibility is the division of humankind into different biological castes, with the rich being upgraded into virtual gods and the poor being degraded to this level of useless people.
Wow. I feel there is another TED Talk coming up in a year.
And they all applaud. Thank you, Yuval Noah Harari.
Do you know, when you said, what is it good? And I thought, I wonder if he's going in the direction of transhumanism. And of course he was.
Of course he is.
Of course he was.
Yeah.
And the useless people. And then for us, of course, we're gasping because there's just this idea that every human being is created to drink in the fountain of life, to judge angels, straight through the fiery stars. And he's like, no, there's actually too many of them. And he's a step away from death camps.
Yeah.
So when I said death camps before, he's let's have them.
Yeah, post-Christianity and post-humanism, go hand in hand. Of course. And so you'll have this useless people, and we'll just drug them and give them computer games.
Yush.
Or eliminate them some way, and there will be these castes of the virtual gods and the useless people.
But it's funny that who is useless in here? He presumably thinks he is useful.
What do we do? On which side of the line is he placing himself?
Yeah, of course. He's part of the virtual gods, isn't he? Of course I'm that. Of course I'm useful. And it's like, are you?
Yeah, like C.S. Lewis in The Abolition of Man, he said, we thought that technology would allow us to have mastery over nature. It turns out it's the mastery of some people over other people with nature as its instrument.
Yeah,
that's what he's talking about. Unless there is an inviolable worth and dignity to all people, and there's no such thing as a useless person.
Yeah,
right. And if you have no economic utility, you are valuable as such, as a Homo sapien, as a human.
I mean, that's the thing, isn't it? For him, it's like he makes me I was laughing a little bit because of the ludicrousness of this vision where the economic value is whether you're useless or not. He's the sort of person who's like, Sweden or whatever. I'm just thinking of a country, and he's like, now what is Sweden? Well, what are its natural resources, and what is the GDP of Sweden?
Right.
And he's deducing. He would think of it in terms of what is its economic value,
its utility.
and its utility. And you're like, but that's like what a barren and ludicrously unnatural way of actually thinking about the world. Like to walk through Sweden and go, how much is this worth?
Well,
what a ludicrous, weird question.
Is it unnatural though, or have we been so Christianized that we refuse to think instrumentally about people or nations in that sort of way? Because the Vikings would have said, quite like Sweden actually.
That's
gonna take
true.
it, you know.
Yeah, we'll have that, and we'll export IKEA and Lego and other things. But but I think is it. Like that, unnatural in the sense that the universe hasn't been made for that purpose, but it's become all too natural to think economically. But isn't it a ghastly thing? Because of course, I guess I'm showing my own problem there. That because I think only in terms of church we're bound together as these people, and we share life together. And the thought that I only love this person insofar as there is an economic value to them or something like that, it's like, what? It literally makes you feel nauseous, doesn't it?
Yeah. And that feeling is more real than the smell of a mountain, right?
Right.
Or the smell of the United States, whatever that smell is.
Yeah,
that's right. And I think that's what people are really keying into about Yuval Noah Harari. I think he's showing us the sinking sand. Yeah. And he's doing us a great favor.
Yeah.
He's also, both via photo negative and by doing good history, showing us where our sensibilities have come from. Yeah. And the photo negative is, well, okay, if we don't have inviolable worth and dignity, then there are some people who are useless and some people who are virtual gods. And okay, that's the horror that we want to avoid. But he is also very clear in Sapiens and especially in Homo Deus that the place where we get rights from is from the Bible. And the stories that we have told that give us the idea that there are such things as, persons with inviolable worth and dignity that cannot be traded away is from the scriptures. So we'll give him at least that he knows where that sensibility has come from historically, and it is Christianity. And so I was very interested that on Twitter, as the Yuval Noah Harari clip became very popular, a tweeter called Anthony Cox said, lots of criticism of this, and I'm no fan of Harari's, but isn't he pointing out from a different perspective Tom Holland's point in Dominion? To which Tom Holland tweets, yes, human rights have no more objective reality than, say, the Trinity. Both derive from the workings of Christian theology, and both, if they are to be believed in, require people to make a leap of faith. Now, Tom Holland is saying you can definitely make that leap of faith, and I wish I could, and at times I find myself able to believe, but it is a faith position. It is not derived from the state of nature. It's not derived from doing scientific experiments about what humans are like. But what do you want to say?
Yeah, I would say no. There's two things there. To say it is not derived from the state of nature. Let's say from the state of the world as it cosmos, the reality of heavens and the earth or something. And then you said not derivable from the scientific method. I certainly think a cogent view of what a human being is as like created to drink in from the fountain of life is not something that the current scientific project as it is as it was done by Bernard of Clairvaux when he's making his machines and the scientific he probably would say no I think we can we are thinking of humans like that in the scientific project, but the scientific project takes a seriously difficult detour, in particularly when you get to later, where it starts to take on this rationalistic, mechanistic, cold, anti-religious character, anti-Jesus character. So now, and I think that has slowed the whole idea of scientific understanding, but that's a whole nother thing. But, so I'd say, no, now you're not going to think like that. But in terms of from the nature of the heavens and the earth, like, yeah, of course you would. Like, if you're understanding, I mean, Psalm 19, I know we think about that, but all these things that are in the scriptures, and then you walk at, once you gaze at the world as it is, as it is,
Yeah.
then it's like Psalm 8. Can I just reference the Psalm 8 thing? Like, if you're the Douglas Adams sort of mentality, you walk outside, you look up at the sky, and you go, aren't I worthless? And he begins the Hitchhikers with that, doesn't he? Though, if you are Psalm 8 and you're looking out at the heavens, like, in a sense, let me put it this way, in the companionship of Christ, the Creator, and it's as if he's standing with you, and you look out, you're going, aren't human beings amazing?
Yeah.
How incredible they are that all of this has been set out like this for us to see from this perspective. See what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's like, nah, I think, like, Tom, I get what, like, if I...
But let's put it this way. Apart from Christian spectacles,
you're
going to look at human beings as one more resource to extract from the world.
Oh, yeah, at best. So atomistic are some of people now. They don't even think about other people at all. But I think, like, so Tom's right. Oh, yeah, this is good. Like, you're getting this from the Bible, from Christianity. But he would say, oh, the Trinity and this is not real. So he's agreeing with the other guy in a way and saying it's just a story, but it's a Christian story,
It's
and
a
need
It's
Christians.
a faith statement, and Tom is more agnostic about whether faith is a good thing or not. Harari is like, well, it's a faith statement, so
it's not true.
And Tom's like, it's a faith statement, and it's a vitally important faith statement if you want to hold on to things like human rights. And I wish I could believe myself, and I
think though so I like lots of that, but it's as if he's disconnected that because he's post-enlightenment. He's like saying, okay, so there's the facts and the meaning. He's like, okay, so this Christian stuff's in the meaning pile, and that's maybe good. And I'm like, yeah, but that whole mechanism of facts and meaning is fake.
Yes.
So that... okay,
it's
Tom,
Emmanuel's
I see
problem.
it. Yeah,
Emmanuel's problem.
Emmanuel did that, but he's accepting Emmanuel's cutting, cutting, and he's like, okay, but so it's in the meaning pile, but maybe that's good, and there's benefits there, and the Christians from the meaning pile have given us human rights. That's a fact. That's a good thing, and they've given us the Trinity too. There's another nice idea that's in the meaning pile, but it's not in the fact pile. And I'm like, no, Tom, actually, you should track back and get to that a bit more. Yeah.
I think there's a positive way of reading it in which you say, hey, you know how when you look into the face of a weak, marginalized person and you see inherent dignity in them, even though they are useless in the eyes of Yuval Noah Harari, and you know the knot that ties in your stomach and the warm fuzzies that you get and the desire to reorient society, and you say that a society is best that looks after this person the most.
Okay.
You know how you really believe in that, and you actually sacrifice for that, and that's more real than mountains. Okay, well, you may as well be hung for a sheep as for a lamb.
Okay.
You may as well believe in angels and the Trinity and the doctrine of the Incarnation and all that kind of stuff, because that is as theological a truth as the Trinity is. And if you are going to believe in that, which Tom very much does believe in, then you may as well believe in the theology that grounds it all.
Yeah, I mean, it's the Schleiermacher move, is it?
Okay.
Where you go, and I know, and that
Friedrich Schleiermacher, 19th century liberal Protestant, German. Okay.
That's right.
Okay.
And like, he goes, okay, here's the Kant thing. Not that you're agreeing with the Kant thing, but I'm just saying what Schleiermacher did to try and combat that is he's like saying, okay, so what we have is the phenomenology. Like, we have our experiences of the factual real world. And he's like, but some of these experiences we have are so compelling. And like, there's a kind of, there is a sort of transcendent reality impacting us here, this feeling of dependence and he's like, exegeting these like deep intuitions and sort of, but the world is like this. I can't help but feel there's a reality here that's part of the data. So my data isn't just like the feeling of the cup, but it's the feeling of like looking into the face of somebody and going, wow, that's a person who's like
has the divine spark within them or whatever.
And things like that. So he's like going, see, like, what are we going to do with that? And he says to the culture despisers kind of religion, you know this. So therefore, could there not be like an actual trinity and things? We can't like directly talk about these transcendent realities, but we can talk about our feelings and experiences that are pointing to that.
Yes.
So he's like, let's reboot the process.
Yep.
But he's still sort of accepting it.
Yeah. So there'd be a way of doing a Schleiermachian thing, which is therefore there are stepping stones from your experienced empirical, experience of the world to these theological truths, sort of maybe, and they gesture towards it. But couldn't there also be a kind of an appeal to the best explanation for the fact why, when you see that video of the cochlear implant of that young girl and she hears for the first time and the hairs go up on the back of your neck, the best explanation for that is, and this is not me trying to like build a stepping stone to a theological case, but the best explanation is we do in fact live in Jesus' universe.
Yeah.
In which the same spirit who rose Jesus from the dead is the spirit who is active in this world right now. And you're in touch with something, an echo of that truth when you're encountering it. Because you are in fact in Jesus' universe.
You're in fact in his house sort of thing. And it's this house. So it's like that whole thing, they used that program, didn't it? Whose house does this belong to?
Oh, yeah,
and,
through the keyhole or
through the keyhole.
Yeah.
And it's like...
Yeah.
I think this is Jesus' house. Looking around at the universe. Yeah. So I do think. So then, if I like mention Schleiermacher again, I know you might say I'm obsessed with him. I am a little bit, but why I am a little bit is, and this is now agreeing with you. What he does, his typical method is because he's wanting always to kind of obey this Kantian thing. And so what we've really got is just our feelings, but I can exegete those and derive something that's vaguely like Christianity out of that. But before he does that, on each topic, he'll go, okay, now then, Jesus or Christology or salvation or God or whatever is his topic. And he goes, now then, this is how it's been understood.
Right.
And then he lays it out sometimes so brilliantly that I'm like, oh my goodness, that is the best I've ever heard somebody explain, like the doctrine of Scripture or something. But then he goes, but we of course can't have that anymore. We have to have this. And he comes up with his new
we're
one.
in science land now.
We're in science land. We've left the home, you know. So he's like, but sometimes when I've read that, I'm like, no, stop. Let's just have all those bits and then just say, imagine if the world, just imagine all that's true. Yeah. And now look at your feelings. And instead of trying to go from the feelings that way, do it like the other way and say, now imagine that all this is true. Now look at those feelings. Yeah. Don't they make sense now?
Yes. No, exactly.
That's the better way. Exactly. Yeah, I agree with you. That's what he should have done.
Yeah. Okay. So Tom Holland makes this point that human rights, the way we speak of them, certainly in the West today and through international law and all the rest of it, has a Christian origin. Jordan Peterson then wanted to respond to Tom Holland, and I'm not sure they've actually interacted that much on Twitter before. It's the first time I've been aware of it. And Jordan B. Peterson says, not exactly, Tom Holland. The doctrine of rights will soon be shown to be an inexorable consequence of the semantic network of meaning that is encoded implicitly into the relationship not only between words and verbal concepts, but stories and also patterns of behavior, built into the structure of human being and perhaps even capital B being itself. In other words, rights are the semantic representation of the archetypal reality that characterizes sustainable, upward-oriented, reciprocally altruistic human interactions. I almost said it. I almost got it.
You always got it.
Not arbitrary at all, quite the contrary. What do you think about that?
Well, that is spectacularly bad communication. Like, when he goes, in other words, and you're like, is this going to be a simpler version? No, it's an even worse version. But he seems to be. So, like, wow, Jordan, that's one of your worst in terms of perspicuous. But I think what he's trying to say is something like, this is what I take from that. He seems to be saying something like, so Tom Holland's saying it's an accidental truth, like this stuff, and because of the Christian religion, and stories and things. And he's like, no, it's more substantial than that. It's something that is written into. Well, he seems to be saying it's necessary part of language and storytelling, that as soon as you have language and storytelling, you're going to end up with human rights. So I don't know what I mean. He probably should broaden his reading a bit. There's a lot of stories that definitely don't do that. But but then he's also saying that there's something, and he loves this, doesn't he? I know we've talked about. He loves this idea that there's this, like, everything's really about not just tidying your room, but like striving upwards.
You're setting the world in order. You're taking responsibility, shouldering the burden of the world. You're tilting the world away from hell and towards heaven.
Right.
And there's that. Cause he talks about the sustainable, upward-oriented, reciprocally altruistic human interactions.
Now, when he goes, he put the beginning bit was the bit. The doctrine of rights will soon be shown to be an inexorable
progress
thing. Yeah. So it's about to be apparent to everybody that this the archetype of character. Reciprocal altruistic human interactions, it will soon realize, and it'll be scientifically proven. I guess he's looking, that's what he usually means, doesn't it? The data's been done, the surveys results are in, and it turns out we're all actually trying to help each other as we journey upwards, striving to the divine. And I'm like, dude, no. How can he, of all people, when he's on, like, he would take himself to task for saying something like that. The earlier Jordan Peterson would say, do you know the 20th century?
Yes, yeah. And so I think historically and then psychologically, there are some serious questions that he himself has raised against this. So psychologically, I think in 12 Rules for Life early on, he has quite a sort of a scientific defense of original sin as this biological reality. We seem to be selfish so-and-sos. And if you had the chance to be a Nazi guard and you lived in 1939, you probably would be, and the chances of you being a heroic kind of person are close to zero. And so he has actually quite a negative anthropology in that sense. So I would say that doesn't really accord with the things that he said psychologically in the past, nor the things that he said historically, like the history of the 20th century, and like the current culture wars. And it's kind of like, you could almost imagine this being written in 1992 or something.
Yeah, that's right.
And the Berlin Wall has come down, and it's the end of history. And
that's right.
But writing it in 2024?
Yeah, and like and Generation Z doesn't feel that optimistic about the future. Like, we're just on the verge of seeing this, and how, isn't it wonderful? It's like, there's like an incredible disillusionment and sense of depression, and can't go to school, can't cope with society and things, and he's like, no, but there's this altruistic. I'm shocked but also that idea that it's about to be discovered. Tremendous kind of optimism,
faith,
which is
right?
It is a faith. But isn't it what he's doing? He's got. So what we're saying is there is a transcendent reality that makes sense of everything else, like this. It is Jesus Christ. It is the Trinity. It is this that before the universe, ere the worlds began, of the Father's love begotten, ere the worlds. And suddenly, when you know that's like story. There's so many things begin to go, so that's why things are as they are. Whereas for him, he doesn't have that. For him, his kind of transcendent reality that manifests, even as Christ, he even sees Jesus Christ as an instantiation of this altruistic yearning for betterness. So even that's his transcendent thing that gets instantiated. So for him, his Schleiermacher thing is like, those feelings of like wanting to, I don't know, tidy your room or be better. That is this yearning, this like strive to be better. Isn't that's his transcendent thing that's trying to manifest
and
itself?
the Christ story is an echo
of that.
Of what is most real for him,
Yeah.
which is the altruistic, upwardly oriented, reciprocal human interactions. Easy for me to say. But, like, I mean, but these human interactions, okay, some people might say, we don't need Christianity to give us human rights because evolution will teach us pro-social behavior. And if two chimpanzees are picking nits off each other, it'll help them in the struggle for survival. And if they cooperate in the hunt, then they'll get more food, right? To which the answer is, well, that cooperation helps. It helps them to outcompete the other tribe and slaughter them.
Yeah, that's
And
right.
really the survival of the fittest is the survival of the most efficaciously violent among us. And Yuval Noah Harari, if you read Sapiens, he gives the most brutal sort of, from his point of view, this is the evolutionary history of like why Homo sapiens like survived and other kind of species of Homo did not. And, you know, it was not democratic elections.
Yeah, no.
Right.
I mean, because evolution, like to get to be the apex predator kind of
Yeah,
thing,
yeah.
you have to kill everything else.
Yeah.
And I'm shocked that he imagines he can discern in that. It's almost like a mystical discernment that goes against all the available evidence, but he can discern in it some inner truth of altruism.
Yeah,
And I'm like, Jordan,
yeah,
you can't, mate. Like, there is no altruism to be discerned there.
Because what are we saying about human rights? We're not just saying...
Not localized.
It's not-
So he's
yeah,
like
right.
a
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
localized. Like,
the Russians
yeah.
love their children too.
That's right.
Right.
Whereas it's
Yeah.
that is definitely not what people are upset about. Because you said everyone's really upset. They're not saying no because me and my localized family, extended family net, like we love each other.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
everyone knows that's not what's at stake here. It's the idea that people I never met before,
Right.
and sort of superficially, I have no reason to even like them.
Yeah.
But I know they have some value
Right.
that transcends all possible,
Yeah.
like horizontal relationships.
Right. So the teacher of the law in Luke chapter 10 says, "Who is my neighbor?" Right. And the answer to that question is always naturally in my own heart of hearts, and the way that people had been even reading the Old Testament had been, well, love your neighbor and hate your enemy.
Yeah.
To the point where Jesus had to come and correct that in Matthew chapter 5. That's not at all what the Old Testament was saying, but certain people were taking Old Testament truths and unpacking them in completely, unbiblical ways. And because that's the natural thing. The Romans had a saying, every day you should do something to be kind to your friends and to harm your enemies. Wow. And everybody loves to, we're about to do the cross stitch of, be kind to your friends and harm your enemies. What? But of course that makes sense in the struggle for survival. Because of course the survival of the fittest means the sacrifice of the weakest. So when Jesus is asked, who is my neighbor, everybody wants him to sort of circumscribe the circle quite narrowly.
Yeah.
And what does he do with the story of the Good Samaritan? Because that's the context in which he tells the story of the Good Samaritan. Your neighbor is your enemy. And in fact, you're the one who's dead and left by the side of the road. And this total stranger from completely outside the system, the Samaritan with a capital S, comes and loves you. And what Jesus is saying there is, who is your enemy? Could even be your neighbor. And the circle of human dignity is to be extended to the very fringes of human society, but actually not beyond it. So there's a human exceptionalism here, but within the human exceptionalism, the human has a dignity as such that is not the same as the dignity of the chimpanzee or the jellyfish. But within the club human, we are all equal in the eyes of God. It's that kind of thing, isn't it? Yeah.
Oh, it is, and that's this extraordinary thing that we're making, because people do get upset about the idea that in the biblical vision of reality, the description of reality, and the whole Christian faith, that humans are privileged.
Yeah.
absolutely.
Human exceptionalism.
Yeah. And people get upset about that. They say, no, but what about that?
Speciesism, man.
Speciesism, man. But the thing is no, because actually at the very core of this is this extraordinary thing that this eternal living God, Father, Son, and Spirit, kind of in this weird way, we're saying, what is the purpose of the universe? And we're like, is kind of us, really, like for us, and that it's not good that the man is alone. Is this sort of primal Trinitarian speech, and it's as if the Father and the Spirit are like, we need to get him married, kind of thing, and human beings are that important, and then we really do think in that Psalm 8 is really saying all the galaxies are laid out in such a way as they are to be viewed from this planet, and any other perspective on them is not allowing you to see them as they're really supposed to be seen. And people are like, you can't be that arrogant. I say, no, it's not an arrogance thing. It's just the fact of how we've been made, and that he becomes one of us, and he doesn't become a chimpanzee, and he doesn't become a dog or anything like that.
Or an angel.
Or even an angel.
Yeah.
And you might say angels, but they're greater than us. And we are a little lower than the angels.
Yeah.
And yet he's like, no, but I'm going to be one of you, not even temporarily one of you, but permanently, forever and ever one of you. Yes. And I want to live your life and share life with you. We are saying that, really and absolutely. And the odd thing is, then it's like, I know you talk about if you press into the weirdness, you come out the other side and find it to be welcoming. That's one of your great saying things. And it's like that with the animals. Okay, and as Romans 8 and everything, and Isaiah 11, things like that, it turns out like the whole creation is waiting for us to be fixed, because they all get fixed too. They're like tied in and get pulled along with us, and the animals get to benefit from it all and all of that. So it's like, actually, the best for them is us.
Yes, and we are to care for
we do now,
and
even forever. And then,
But you cannot get around Jesus saying, you're worth more than many sparrows, right?
Yeah, absolutely. That's true.
And it struck the ancient world as remarkably humanistic, ridiculously so. Yeah. So, Celsus, like a second century, fierce critic of the church, would say it is in no way obvious that humans are of greater value than bees or ants, right? Yeah. We play our part in the cosmos.
In the biosphere.
And that's what we would say now. Is in the evolutionary scheme, well, we are adapted to our environment, and a jellyfish is adapted to its environment. And who is superior? Well, you can't really say. We're just adapted. We're just kind of and Christians are saying something radically humanistic at that stage.
Yeah, absolutely.
That the human as such is valuable and in the image of God, and that's why I think, Tom Holland is able to come back to Jordan Peterson and say, listen, the way we think of human rights has not been derived from evolutionary theory, and it has not been derived from an ancient, sort of Roman way of seeing the world. It has come through historical developments in Western medieval Christendom. He says, in reply to Jordan Peterson, the notion that a doctrine which emerged in the very specific context of 12th century Italy in response to the unprecedented circumstances of the Gregorian Reform, a process of ideological upheaval unique to Latin Christendom, was simultaneously built into the structure of human being, and perhaps even being itself, definitely requires a leap of faith. What's he saying there?
Well, I think what he's saying, I'm surprised he locates, I understand that the specific language of rights he's locating in the 12th century, but I'm immediately wanting to go, no, that's not good. That is a specific vocabulary, but that vision of human beings, you're going to have to go back thousands of years before that and look at even just the way in early church times were I know it's been often said how the biggest item in a local church budget, for not all over the Roman Empire, but there's examples of it, is just buying the freedom of slaves and things, and that's they join church. So, why would they do that sort of thing? Because that vision of human beings, and in the book of Revelation, first century, it's there at the end of the Bible, and this vision is, we've got this the vision of the heavenly throne room, and there's people from every tribe, language, tongue, people, and it gets repeated like every ethnicity, every culture, everything, and it keeps repeating these fourfold descriptions of the vast number, every kind of person, every capacity, every range of person is part of the supreme gathering of the heavenly reality. And in that, there's just this kind of obsession with taking humans seriously, irrespective of any of the accidental markers that human beings do go, oh no, but like Immanuel Kant does it. He's like, oh, all the race, I'm going to grade the races and like categorize them, who's better than others.
And apparently Prussians are at the top of the pile. Who would have
thought?
Who would have
thought? That's true. That was fortunate for him. But but that kind of thing, that's the kind of instinct. If you ditch Christ, you are going to end up setting up slave trades.
Yeah.
And that's what happened. And that sort of thing happens. Christ tells you, no, like, let's try and ditch that. Let's try and buy freedoms and things. And even when you go back to the Old Testament too, there's like Abraham and Sarah, there's this lovely sort of thing that they set off from Babylon, and it takes a couple of generations for them to arrive. And then the Lord, they're sort of running this, like, let's call it an early church. I like to call it a church. And then they have all this stuff, and people go, but then you pay attention, there's like Lot guy needs rescuing, and there's hundreds of people in this like extended family, and all the food, and they've got animals and things, but it turns out they've got this huge number of people they're providing for, and it's all and it's this vision, let's look after people and provide for them and train them and include them, and that's so basic to this biblical vision because it's an overflow of actually the eternal life of the God who designed the universe.
Yeah. So, in the same way that Isaac Newton did not invent gravity, but discovered it. And yes, there are all sorts of historical kind of contexts in which, well, of course he would, and you can explain the historically contingent circumstances by which he would name the thing gravity, and that's interesting. But he has not invented gravity, he has discovered gravity. Yeah. I think that's what we need to say in this context, that, okay, maybe that particular language, the language that still survives to today, was invented in 12th century Italy. Nevertheless, we would say this is not an invention, and it's very important not to call this an invention. It's very important to call this a discovery. Why is that important?
Oh, I love the fact you've framed it like that, because let's just think that through, the gravity thing. Because if you go, okay, he calls this thing gravity, but it's intrinsic to the universe itself, and you can go back to ancient writers, and they're trying to, they are encountering the same reality. Something that is part of, and they're coming up with, they're saying, oh, there's like stones want to go down. That's our attempt at that. Because they're encountering the same reality, but they haven't got the and then he comes up with this vocabulary and gravity, and and exactly that way in the 12th century, these Italians are like, there's like a rightness about humans, the human rights, and then like I say, Abraham and Sarah will go, yeah, I get that's right. That's what we're trying to deal with when we're trying to incorporate people of all sorts of different nationalities and backgrounds and welcome them and care for them, because we should, because that's the nature of human beings, to be like that. And so that exactly that way, it's something that is intrinsic to the universe, not invented. It's not a story, to go back to that first dude. Oh, it's just a story. No, it's as...
And there's no just about story either.
Oh, sorry. I shouldn't have said that. That was terrible. I know that. I repent.
But I think that's what Jordan Peterson kind of brings along and says, well, you cannot have a realm of facts without a story that actually frames the way that you're... Because there's too much world. It's coming at you. There's billions of bits of information coming to you. You need a filter. What's the filter? The filter is a story that actually orients you to the world and gives you the hierarchy of values, and therefore the world of fact and the world of value must integrate at some level. And so he's trying to stitch back together what Immanuel Kant kind of cleaved asunder. He's trying to do it in this scientific mode. But what I think he gets wrong, and where I think Tom Wright is to correct him...
Tom Holland, sorry.
Where Tom Holland is right to correct him is that it is Christ himself, it's Christian theology, let's say, but let's say Christ himself, that actually discovers and gives you the universe that makes sense of the discovery. And it cannot be just a simple fact of human nature that we derive this thing called human rights. It is a universal, actually, Tom Holland. It's been discovered, not invented, but it is a universal, Jordan Peterson, that comes through Christ alone. And it's putting together the universality of Christ, Tom Holland, and putting together the scandal of the particularity to Jordan Peterson. It's Christ who really gives this to us.
Yeah, I remember years ago you were preaching at a wedding and you were sort of making this point that the framing of the universe is a story, and it's a wedding story. And from the beginning, the whole thing is about kind of to do that, to have the right story, and then when we're like, that's the story. The whole universe is set up to be the stage on which this story is to be told. And if you're looking at the stage, the theatre, and you're like, what's the story that's going on in this theatre? Oh, it's this story. It's this story. And now we can make sense of the scenery, what the props and the lighting and
Right, yeah. Exactly. So we got to draw this to a conclusion. What is it about Christ himself that can actually give us that sense that everyone has had this sense that Yuval Noah Harari is treading on something sacred. And we've gone, you can't do that, you're blaspheming. Well, maybe we have more of a sense of the sacred than we thought we had. How is it that Christ alone gives us that sense?
Yeah, there's something like gigantic about him, and it's that. In a way, the more offensive thing to me is when Jordan Peterson says things like, Christ is an example of something more than him. Right. Actually, so I probably should be more upset about the human rights thing, but actually because Christ is so precious to me, when he does that and he's dissing, he thinks he's complimenting, but he's dissing him because he's saying, he's less than this other thing. And I'm like, it literally.
So what you're saying is that the altruism thing for Jordan Peterson, taking responsibility and shouldering the burdens of the world and marching up the hill, is the real thing, and Christ is an echo.
Yes.
Of the Christ story is an echo of the real thing, which is taking responsibility and standing up with his shoulders back. Yeah.
That makes me feel ill because I'm like, no, you've not begun to grasp the Lord Jesus Christ. And that there's this morning when we were together thinking that Matthew 11 thing, and he says, everything in heaven and earth has been handed over to me. And he says it with absolutely no sense of everything in heaven and earth is mine.
I'm meek and lowly in heart, he goes on to say.
He does. He's just like, no, and he comes across that way. There's no sense of self-assertion about the fact he's saying, I run the universe. It all is in my hands. And then he says no one knows the Son except the Father. And then he goes, no one knows the Father except the Son, and those to whom the Son explains him. And so just if we appreciate that for a minute, just to get the enormity of this guy, what he's saying, and the people with him who were living with him and sleeping under hedges and things like that, went, that I think that is what he is. And he's saying, so the Father is that's the most high God. That's one of his titles, this sense of the utterly transcendent person of the Trinity who lives at the highest level of reality on this throne, hundreds of millions of angels around him. And no one gets to see him. He's beyond, if to see him is to die. And he's like, no one knows him, but I know him, and I can explain him to people. But then before that, the bit I wanted to just notice is he says, no one knows me except the Father. And then he doesn't go, and those to whom he's like, no, just no one ever understands me. And it's as if it's this Jesus who, it's when we think he walks around and he can walk on water, the weather will obey him, he knows what people are thinking, he can feed the hungry, answer every question, raise dead, command demons, and he does it effortlessly, and he doesn't ask for it. He doesn't go, God, will you do this? He just does it. Yeah. And he does it with this utter gentleness and like way in which he doesn't, and when people come to him, he just helps them with this love, and he gets to, he doesn't, he like wants to like help them with what's really going on in their lives and all these sorts of things. But we can't, there's something about him that's like always more, always greater. And so we think, what can unite all human beings so that the lowliest person, the highest person is humbled in his presence. The lowliest person is utterly picked up and loved and valued and given joy. And that even if you're in like a solitary confinement in a prison, you can know freedom and joy if you can only know him. And there's so many testimonies of that. And then the greatest, like Charlemagne or these emperors would feel, oh, I'm like a servant and I know him. And there's something about him that's so gigantic and beautiful and gentle. And so when we come to him, we think, no, like if you know him, all these things, the reason that human beings are as they are is because we were made to be like him. We were made to be like him. And so even the person who's like, I hate religion, I hate Jesus and things like that, they get upset because even we, as pale imitations we are of the primal man, Jesus Christ, there's something about that cries out.
Yeah. So he is the other Emmanuel, the original Emmanuel. So Immanuel Kant cleaves asunder.
Whereas this one holds it all together.
He's the Word who became flesh.
Yeah.
And you cannot ground a universal humanism. I can't see how you can ground a universal humanism without God the human, right?
Yeah.
Like he is God, because you're basically, with your humanism, you're basically saying humanity is top of the tree somehow. Well, if we're top of the tree only in the Yuval Noah Harari sense, guess what will happen? Some will become virtual gods, others will be useless people. You cannot have a universalism without God the human, and then as soon as Christ takes flesh, he takes flesh for all humanity. He is the man for all men and women, right? And so a single man redeems women and men and highborn and lowborn and all that, so that humanity as such is given that supreme dignity that could not be given to it any other way. You cannot get it's just by the nature of the case. You cannot have human rights without Jesus Christ. But it's not the way of let's do stepping stones towards Jesus Christ. It's a way of saying, hey, you know that echo that you hear. And you hear the echo every time you're going through Facebook and there's some like video where somebody gives like some money to the homeless guy, and then you know what the homeless guy does with it? He goes and gives it to another homeless guy. And oh my goodness, the compassion, the humanity, the dignity, but that's an echo of Christ who slept rough for you and descended to the bottom for you. But you're not going to get it until you open up scriptures and have a look at Jesus for yourself, and then you're looking at the original. Yeah. As you see him walk on water, you're just like, okay, that is the original from which everything else is the echo.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I love that. And sometimes I remember having an experience, because I'm not very good at musical things, but I remember I was listening to all different kinds of music, and I was trying to show somebody this collection. I was like, I quite like this, and I quite like that, and I quite like that. And then they went, oh, that's because... And they started to explain to me this much greater reality of music, and then it was just mind blowing to me because so they, instead of they were like, you like that and you like that, and that to me they were just like, oh, I'm totally eclectic. And they went, no, because, and then they started to like sit. I was, and for a moment I was standing next to them in this bigger reality of understanding the thing itself, kind of thing.
Yes.
And then, it's like that. It's like, come, don't just come and stand next to Jesus and get this vision. Now do you see?
Yeah. Imagine meeting beauty himself.
Yeah.
Goodness himself, truth himself. That's who Jesus is. And we have an opportunity, if you want to encounter Jesus, we've got a great course for you to do where you can just meet him and figure out who this Jesus is. He shows us who God is, what the world is like, and who you are. It's called 321. You can go to 321course.com. Go and do the course. You can binge it all in one go. You can take it over 8 sessions, however you like to do it. Or you can find a church in which you can do it in person. We'd love you to do 321 and get to know this Jesus. But Paul Blackham, thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks so much.